Well, it's quite like this. When you come into this world, you are shapeless, psychologically. You have a body, but as far as your mind is concerned, it's free. It doesn't have a form. It's shapeless. Now, in the first few years, one learns some very basic survival skills. Eating, walking, and so forth. And at some point, when the brain develops a little further, you start picking up signals from others in the form of behaviors and education and morals. What is right and what is wrong. And this starts to form you into some shape, if I can use that analogy. Now, this shape is influenced by the people around you, the people in your daycare, parents, grandparents, things you read, pictures you see, the television, and so forth. Now, things are rather new and afresh at this very early stage of our lives, and we can pick things up pretty quickly, one would say. Now, the moment you have stepped into this world and that shape starts to form, whatever pipeline you've been shoved into, and the shape of the pipeline, if I can say, is different depending on where you live, the country you're born in, the language, or the verbal and non-verbal traits, the unconscious and conscious, norms of society, rules from communities, traditions. It's pretty messy in that pipeline, and that pipeline on the outside pretty much looks the same in its form all over the world. But what's inside it is shaped in a certain form for everyone who goes in there. So in the beginning of the pipeline, it's a little wider and easier to go in. You're still a young child, so they want you to come in there. Its opening looks rather attractive and lots of fun and games. And it's also big enough to fit whatever shape you might be starting to form at the time. But as you go through the pipeline, it has you constantly shrinking and shaping you. So if you come in as a slight circle, but the pipeline is a square, then don't worry, we'll keep you safe and we'll turn you into a square. Whether you know it or not, eventually you'll be shaped into that square quite nicely. So once into the pipeline, you get pushed in there unknowingly, you're on that production line. You're a potential, useful resource that would one day benefit society and help the country sustain itself economically and so forth. In other words, you're a product in design in that pipeline. And that design is already made up of a number of structures for you. Now, as long as you're in that production line, you form a self. Your norms, values, behaviors, morals, things about life, your experiences, all based around the information in your environment. And let's say in a pipeline, that's presented as a square. Now, as long as you're not aware of it, you become nicely shaped into that square. You become very obedient. When somebody tells you to do something, you'll do it without resistance. You become a good citizen. But you've reduced yourself to the square, which is also going to present itself with a model, right? In that model, which is far from perfect, comes stress, anxiety, potential health issues. It requires you to make money, pay bills, and therefore greed shows its face, and competition, and of course, contributing to sustaining that pipeline by paying taxes. And for the majority, this is what they call life. It sounds extraordinarily tiring when you look at it from this perspective, doesn't it? Now, once you get tired and old, eventually, you might want to relax for a couple of years before you exit the pipeline. And then eventually you'll realize what freedom was once again, which is shapeless, formless, and none of what the pipeline presented in 70, 80, or 90 years of your life. Now, you'll either realize this through death, whether at the end of your life, that is physically, or you can realize it at any time when you realize it psychologically, which means you can still be physically alive, but awaken to this. Now, at some point, if I can go back to the square again, some people might realize, what the heck is going on here? And you start thinking, I don't want to be a square anymore. Life is too tough. I want out. Right? They become aware of the limitations of the square through their observation of life, the stress, the difficulties, the deceptions, and they instead decide they want to be a triangle. Now, there's conflict in that production line, because what's going to happen now if you're a square and you decide to be a triangle in a pipeline that is square? You're going to get tremendous backlash. You can no longer be shaped by a square, and as you know, a triangle won't fit very smoothly into a square. So you're going to have people's opinions clashing with you, conflicts, the difference between you and everybody else. You start to feel quite isolated because you're the only triangle in there. They start to look at you like an outcast, so they start rejecting you. And this so-called journey might lead to the triangle getting out of one pipeline and looking for the pipeline with a triangle. So it goes into another pipeline to see if they get better acceptance there. Now, this is what happens when people move from country to country or society to society, or they change religions or, switch different philosophies. Again, until at one point, even in the new pipeline, they run up against some resistance, stress again, anxiety, fear. And if they're lucky, they'll realize the same thing happens in every pipeline. So, it seems to me that from the early stages of our life, love is almost nowhere to be found. In fact, it seems the moment we are in that pipeline, we're educated out of love. And the pipeline shaping you into what society wants and needs you to be for the benefit of them is absolutely not freedom. But you see, we don't know this when we go into the pipeline. We're not that developed to be aware, to be able to see this. If we were, we wouldn't be going in there. And as you know, for freedom, love cannot live in limitation. It's something that's always absolutely and completely unconditionally free. But here's the thing, see, once you're in the pipeline, it has its own definition of what love is. And they'll teach you that definition based on the limited version of that shape. So the square will teach you what it thinks you should be thinking love is. Now, sure, sometimes it happens in that pipeline, but it sounds very conditional because it's the definition the square gives you. I love you when you're nice to me, but when you're not, you're annoying, and I don't love you anymore. I love you for 10 years, but you've changed. You don't listen to what I say anymore. You don't fulfill my own needs, so I'm going to divorce you. Very conditional, isn't it? Does not sound like love to me. And stress comes along in much the same way. And you chase happiness to counteract that stress, whether through excessive seeking from desire or otherwise. So you see, there is all this energy circulating in that pipeline. And we're not labeling it positive or negative here, it's energy. And now along comes another pipeline, which is very competitive, has more money, different beliefs, different amount of gods, They have better needs, and so forth. They have more power. And let's call them the circle. And the circle says, I need some of your resources. To the square. Square disagrees, and the two clash. Now we have violence. The square pipeline decides to attack the circle pipeline out of defense, or it could happen the other way. The result of this is humans die on the offensive or the defensive. And whether you identify with the square or the circle, you're part of that pipeline, fighting to keep that place alive. And you're doing that at the cost of other human lives, which is the greatest sadness we humans have accepted about all of this. Now, on the sidelines watching are the other number of shapes who think they're safe and protected. But internally, the truth is, they're just as vulnerable as the square and the circle. They're structured in the same way. They believe they are separate until they're reminded that we live on the same rock. Which is why you see so many people jumping, as I said, from country to country, religion to religion, philosophy to philosophy, shape to shape, or trying to escape to the top of a mountain. All they're really looking for is what's naturally already them when they came into the world. Free. Love. But now they're so well attuned to the pipeline, the movement in there, the doing, becoming more, the having more, the seeking more, the accumulating more. And this goes on in that pipeline for as long as you're in there. Now, if you've followed this so far, you might have seen the fact that you are a shape. If you don't see it, you might be questioning, well, then how do I see my shape? If you realize the shape, it means you start to realize all the characteristics of that shape. Many in forms of limitations, the separations, the lack of love in that shape, the fear that comes with that shape. Now you get to hear it from me. I could tie you to a chair and repeat some mantra for days and weeks and months and convince you that you are a shape. I give you a test after that, and if you pass, you can leave. Which is actually what's happening. Then, hopefully you've realized that this guy is doing exactly the same thing that was happening in the shape. Which is absolutely bizarre. It's ridiculous. Why would I corrupt you like that? But please don't dismiss this, because this is exactly what most of us are doing. We pay for some expensive celebrity guru speaker. We, talk to the author of a famous book. We pay some special fee to some so-called expert. We're always out there looking for answers. But no matter who it is you ask, they all have their own shape. And a triangle, trying to teach others to be free of the triangle, is still a triangle. So only you can understand your own shape, which these days is so prized as individuality in the world, so prized. You need only to look in the mirror to see the facts of the world that you live in, and the shape will reveal itself. So to find out what's created in all of these shapes, what does one do? Right? Why have they been there for thousands of years? Why are they transmitted to us from so early in life? Now, if your brain is quiet enough, quiet in that it's not processing information when you look in that mirror, it's not identifying a feeling with a sensation, it is perceiving that sensation without defining it, then you'll see the essence, you'll see its form, you'll see the violence. You see it in one go. And when that insight does come, and only comes when the brain is absolutely quiet, then something happens. And you can no longer go back to being that shape. That shape cannot possibly understand the entirety of the limitlessness of life. And from that comes a different form of compassion for every living organism in the world. And I have to say, I'm hesitant to share this because many people will go off and try to find the best techniques, the best ways, the best methods to quieten your brain. But I've got news for you. We've tried that for thousands of years through meditation practices, various different practices, yoga, etc. And the only benefits that have really come from that is that somebody's pockets have become full. And they'll try to convince you of a better life, of all the endless happiness and joy, and everything else they promise as long as you pay a little fee. And it's not so little for some. And I'm not just talking about the fee of money here too, by the way, because what tends to happen is you follow somebody for years and years. You try and copy what they do, but you've just become another shape. As long as you apply a system, any system, to a shape, you will only further shape it, not unshape it. And the shape is built entirely on a number of systems. Look at what's out there. Get rich quick systems, manifestation systems, 10 ways to make your dreams come true, the 1 second success factor, 10 ways to compassionate work, or my favorite, cultivating empathy in the workplace. I think I saw another one, the 1 second lover. Since we're all so busy, 1 second is enough. So how do I see that I am the shape? I could look at all of my automatic processes in a day. The brain loves repetition and has you constantly repeating things, thoughts, patterns. Look for habits. You could look at the conversations you're having with people and any resistance you have to what people say. Those are big indicators of the limitations of beliefs. Right? The square comes with beliefs that you picked up on that pipeline. They were repetitively taught to you in some kind of form from a very young age. And beliefs are super tricky because they don't want you to mess with them. The brain protects beliefs more than anything else. So whether you believe this or that, or don't believe this or that, it's all the same cage. And that cage is very thick. In your daily work, can you observe the way you're working? Setting goals, trying to prove that you can accomplish those goals, working extra hours, trying to prove you're right, trying to get promoted, designing new ways of doing things, new tools, new apps, faster ways of doing things, improvement. And if you're lucky, you might have a bit of time to see your kids at the end of the day before they go off to bed. I'm exhausted just by saying that. But this is what humans have been doing for centuries. It's not just I am like this. It's the whole of humankind being trained into a shape. Again, the shape might be different. It doesn't matter. What's important is in the observation of that shape. None of those draining, energy-sapping activities come into this. Because when the brain is quiet, it is listening. It's not associating what it sees with a word, or belief, or any pattern that it's learned from the past. It's not recalling any of that. It's quiet. It's just looking. And it sees the fact of the production line. Now, the fact of the production line, not academically, not according to some guru, not according to what a book told you, not because anyone told you it's there, but as a fact means you see it for yourself. Now, what happens to the brain is quite remarkable, because in that perception of what is, there is still sensation. But what do you perceive in that sensation if there's no word or sound to define it?